Are you struggling with your writing? Because chances are it's not your fault. Because as writers, we've been told to focus on all the wrong things. Now, over the last year and a half here at StoryGrid, we've reviewed and analyzed and given feedback on thousands of scenes from hundreds of writers. And over that time, we've identified the 8 biggest mistakes holding writers back. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to fix them. Now, my name is Tim Grahl. I'm the CEO of StoryGrid, where we teach writers how to write books that actually work. I'm the author of 6 books, including my most recent, The Shithead, which has been praised by New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling authors. Everything I teach is built on the expertise of our founder, Sean Coyne, an editor, writer, and story researcher with over 30 years of experience in publishing. His track record is an 86% success rate in the marketplace, while traditional publishing doesn't even crack 35%. So if you're here to learn how to tell a story that keeps readers hooked, you're in the right place. Okay, let's dive into these 8 common mistakes and how you can fix them. First of all, there's this advice floating around that says, just write every day and you'll improve. Well, it sounds great, right? But here's the thing. Practice doesn't automatically make you better. If you keep practicing something the wrong way, all you do is get better at doing it wrong. Think about tennis. If you practice your swing incorrectly for years, guess what? You've just trained yourself to have a terrible swing. This is the same for writing. If you keep making the same mistakes, you're reinforcing bad habits. So what's the fix? Instead of treating writing as one giant skill, break it down into smaller pieces. Focus on one skill at a time, maybe spend a week just on dialogue, then another week just on scene structure, and then get feedback on that specific skill and how to apply it to your writing. The writers who improve the fastest aren't the ones writing the most words, they're the ones deliberately practicing the right skills and leveling them up one at a time. So that first mistake that most writers make is they're just writing and writing and writing without focusing on skills. So let's look at the second one. You've probably heard this one before. You should be showing, not telling, in your writing. So writing something that is telling would be something like, Sarah was nervous about the interview. If you want to show that to the reader, you would say, Sarah's fingers drummed against her resume. She checked her watch. Again, a bead of sweat traced down her temple despite the office's aggressive air conditioning. Which one pulls you in? The second one, right? That's because it makes you feel what Sarah is feeling. It engages your senses instead of just giving you information. It invites you to interpret rather than being spoon-fed emotions. Whenever you tell instead of show, it's like going to the theater and stepping between the person watching the movie and the actual screen, and instead of just letting them watch what happens, you tell them instead. And here's where a lot of writers get stuck. Showing doesn't just apply to emotions. It applies to settings, relationships, character traits, everything. Don't tell me the house is creepy. Show me the way the floorboards creak under uncertain steps, how the shadows seem to shift in the corners of your vision. And challenge yourself. Every time you want to write he felt or she was, ask, can I show instead? So that's the second mistake. Writers that tell instead of show. And now let's look at number 3. When we look at writing from beginners, it often reads something like this. Mark walked into the room. He saw the letter on the table. He opened it and read it. He was shocked. It's a list of things happening, but there's no emotion, there's no tension, no engagement. So what's missing in here? Well, first of all, the tension. What does Mark want? We can't actually see what he wants in that line. Obstacles. What's stopping him from getting what he wants? And then sensory details. What does the room feel like, smell like? What sounds are happening around him? And there's just zero emotional weight. Why does this moment even matter to Mark, and therefore why should it matter to the reader? So let's rewrite it. Mark hesitated at the doorway. The scent of his father's pipe tobacco still lingered months after the funeral. His gaze landed on the letter, a cream envelope, his mother's handwriting, the same hand that had signed his birthday cards and permission slips, now forming his name in sharp, angry strokes. His fingers trembled as he broke the seal. Now you're in it with Mark, and that's the goal. So the third mistake most writers make is listing actions instead of creating engaging scenes. Let's look at number 4. In every great scene, something changes. A scene should start with a certain emotional state and end with a different one. If it starts and ends the same, why does it exist? Nothing changed in the scene, nothing pushed the story forward. So here's just a few examples of the many value shifts you can have. You can move from trust to betrayal, hope to despair, ignorance to knowledge, confidence to doubt. If nothing shifts, if your characters feel the same, think the same, and have the same information at the end as they did at the start, the scene isn't doing its job. And so that's the fourth mistake we see, is that writers are creating flat scenes with no value shift. So you've got to fix that. Now let's look at the fifth mistake. A story without conflict is, well, not a story. But here's the trick. Not all conflict is created equal. So weak conflict would be something like two characters argue, but nothing's really at stake. A strong conflict would be a character must betray either their best friend or their principles. The best conflicts have clear stakes, so something's being gained or lost based on the decision the characters are making, personal significance, why it matters to the characters in the scene, a ticking clock, why does it have to happen now instead of later, and an impossible choice. This is the crisis of your scene, and we make sure that the protagonist has no easy way out. If your conflict doesn't force your character into a really, really tough decision, it won't force your reader to care. And so that's the fifth mistake we see writers making, is failing to create meaningful conflicts. Now, let's take a look at number 6. Okay, this is the big one. And it's a hard truth, especially for writers. You can't grow in isolation. A lot of writers only share their work with family and friends who will just say, yeah, it's great. Or they resist analyzing their work structurally. Or they take critique personally instead of seeing it as a tool for growth. Or they only share it with their writers group where they're getting kind of vague, soft feedback that's unactionable. So if you want to be a successful writer, you've got to get feedback, and you've got to get expert feedback. And that means seeking out critique partners or coaches who will tell you the truth and have the expertise to actually point out what's wrong, what's right, and how you can get better. You've also got to learn how to analyze your story structure instead of just hoping that it works. And you've got to learn to let go of your ego and revise based on what you learn. No one gets it right on the first try. Not even the best writers get it right on the first try. And especially if you're learning, this is where you need feedback. And so this is the 6th mistake I see beginner writers make, is they don't get expert feedback on their writing. Now, let's look at number 7. This is the one I see most often when I'm looking at writing from beginners, is they just put loads and loads of detail. They put backstory and setting information and all kinds of stuff that the reader doesn't need to know right now. And what it causes is the reader starts skimming and then skipping ahead and then closing the book and moving on. So what's the fix? Well, the first one is what I call minimum viable exposition. Only put in what the reader needs to know right now. If they don't need to know it right now for what's about to happen, just save it for later when they actually do need to know it. Number 2, just-in-time exposition. Reveal backstory when it becomes relevant. Don't start with a giant backstory dump. And then number 3, action-based integration. Work the details into dialogue or conflict. Don't just info dump a bunch of information all by itself. Anytime you do that, it's like pulling up the emergency brake on the narrative drive. Readers don't need to know everything that you know about your story. They just need enough to stay engaged in the moment. So that's number 7, is overloading with exposition and backstory. Now, let's look at the last one. Number 8, when you have characters that don't want anything or they have vague goals, this leads to meandering, unfocused stories. Strong characters need a specific want. Not just be happy or find purpose, they have to have something specific. They're trying to get to work on time. They want their boyfriend to tell them that they love them, right? They also need meaningful obstacles that's getting in the way of what they want. And finally, a deep contradiction within themselves, where what they want and what they actually need are in constant opposition. So here's a simple formula when I'm thinking through my character's object of desire, is they have to want X without having to why. They have to want something, but there's this constraint. There's this thing they don't want to have to do or not want to have to give up in order to get it. So Sarah may want the promotion without betraying her mentor. Or John wants to tell the truth without destroying his family. Or Maya wants justice without becoming like her enemies. Now there's conflict baked into the entire story. If your character doesn't want something specific, your reader won't care what happens. So that's number 8, is writing characters without clear, specific objects of desire that they are constantly pursuing. Okay, so you just listened to me list out all of those mistakes, but how do you actually go about fixing them? That's where the real work actually begins. So there's a really simple process. First, just pick one area to focus on. What are you going to focus on that you want to improve in those mistakes? Number 2, go back and analyze a single scene from your work and see if you can find where you're making those mistakes. And then 3, apply what you've learned and then revise and repeat. Writing isn't about cranking out more words. It's about getting better at the craft, taking writing, breaking it down into individual skills, practicing those, and then getting expert feedback. So you may be wondering, well, what are all those skills I'm supposed to break it down into? How do I actually know what those skills are that I'm supposed to be practicing? Well, I've got a free resource for you. If you go to storygrid.com/checklist, you're going to get a 13-point scene writing checklist. This is a checklist that we use when we're analyzing our students' scenes to see if their scenes are working and where they need to get better. And so if you sign up at storygrid.com/checklist, I'll not only send you the checklist, I'll send you a walkthrough on how to use the checklist to apply it to your own writing. So go do that now, sign up, and I'll immediately send you the checklist. Now, of course, in this video, I also talked about getting expert feedback. And if you've struggled with where to get good, expert one-on-one feedback on your writing, I totally understand. I couldn't find any for years as well. And so that's why at StoryGrid, we started the scene writing workshop. This workshop is a 6-week workshop where each week you're going to turn in writing to a StoryGrid coach. They're going to read it, annotate it, and give you one-on-one feedback, telling you what you did right, what you did wrong, and how to improve in the next week. Along with the feedback, you get a writing community that is dedicated to their craft. You get training every week. You get added to a small cohort of 30 or less people where you can learn together with other writers and so much more. So go to storygrid.com/workshop to find out more. Submit your application to see if you're a good fit for our next workshop. And then finally, if you want to take what you learned in this video and keep on going, I've got a great next video that you should watch now. That's up on your screen right now. But either way, thanks so much for being a writer. Thanks for being a part of our community here at StoryGrid, and I'll see you next time.